I signed the divorce papers that morning in a sunlit room of my lawyer's office, the light streaming in a bit too cheerfully for such a somber occasion. I felt the weight of my wedding ring, now just a band of metal, heavy in my pocket where I had placed it before entering. I told myself that this was the closure I needed. My ex-husband, whose presence always seemed to occupy more space than it should, offered a brief nod, his features tight with unspoken thoughts. I wondered about the emotions hidden behind his stoic facade, but I reminded myself that those were no longer my concern. As I left the building, I breathed deeply, the crisp morning air tasting like freedom and new beginnings. My heart beat with a mixture of sorrow and tentative excitement for the future I would now rewrite alone. I moved into a small but bright apartment across the city, far from the suburban home I once shared with him. My walls were bare, my shelves unfilled, but the space was mine alone, and that fact filled me with a strange, burgeoning joy. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college, before my marriage. The strokes felt awkward at first, my fingers stiff and unyielding, but with each day, the colors began to flow more freely, mirroring the newfound vibrancy in my life. I made friends with the barista at the local coffee shop, a young woman with a bright smile and a shared love for obscure poetry. We'd spend hours discussing Plath and Hughes, our conversations a welcome distraction from the solitude of my evenings. One rainy afternoon, I found myself at a cozy bookstore near my apartment. As I perused the aisles, my fingers skimmed over the spines of countless books, each title a whisper of other lives, other stories. That's when I heard a familiar voice, one that sent a jolt through me. I turned, and there he was as my ex-husband, looking slightly out of place amidst the literary chaos. His eyes met mine, and I saw the flicker of surprise mirrored in them. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice careful, measured. I managed a small smile, feeling the old familiar tension pulling at the edges of the space between us. "I could say the same," I replied. We talked then, about trivial things, recent reads, the weather, the quaintness of the bookstore. But beneath the casual exchange, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, a mix of nostalgia and regret, pulling at the heartstrings I thought I had firmly secured away. As we parted, the rain seemed to have intensified, the droplets a fitting, rhythmic backdrop to the tumultuous emotions swirling within me. I watched him depart, the silhouette of his figure gradually merging with the gray, rain-soaked horizon. I stood alone under the shelter of the old oak that had witnessed many such goodbyes, its leaves whispering secrets above me. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the fabric soaked with a chill that seemed to seep into my bones. My heart ached with a familiar sorrow, yet I trembled with something new, something like hope mixed with fear. I should head back, I murmured to myself, but my feet disobeyed, rooted to the muddy ground as my thoughts chased each other like the leaves swirling in the stormy wind. The way he looked at me today, with eyes that seemed to peel back the layers I had wrapped tightly around my soul, stirred memories I had tried so hard to bury. Why does it feel like I'm leaving a part of me behind every time we part? I whispered into the rain, half hoping the wind might carry my words to him. I made my way back to my apartment, my mind replaying each moment of our encounter as I dodged puddles and jumped over streams made by the relentless rain. Once inside, I peeled off my damp coat and shoes, leaving them by the door as I headed straight for the warmth of a hot shower. The water cascaded over me, but it couldn't wash away the lingering touch of his fingers against my cheek or the warmth of his breath as he spoke. As I stood beneath the shower, I let my mind wander back to his words, to the careful modulation of his voice that seemed to caress even as it spoke. "We're more alike than you think," he had said. Such simple words, yet they echoed loudly in my tiled sanctuary, bouncing off the walls and enveloping me in a sonic embrace. I turned off the water, the sudden silence feeling heavy, oppressive. Wrapped in a towel, I stood at my fogged-up mirror, tracing the path of a single water droplet with my finger. "Who are you, really?" I asked my obscured reflection, knowing the answer was just beyond my reach. Later, I sat wrapped in a blanket on my couch, a cup of tea warming my hands. The rain had lessened to a gentle tapping against my window, a rhythmic pattern that seemed to sync with the beating of my heart. My phone lay next to me, its screen dark and silent. I thought about reaching out to him, about shattering the silence with a message, but hesitation held my hand still. Instead, I let my mind drift to the future, to possibilities that seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. I could imagine us walking down a sunlit path, our steps in sync as easily as our conversation. I could see us laughing over a shared joke, the kind that was funny only to us. Or perhaps, I thought, feeling a twinge of sadness, this would become another memory, another what if to add to my collection. I sipped my tea, each mouthful a mix of warmth and bitterness. What are you afraid of? I asked myself, setting the cup down with a clink. My heart knew the answer even if I wasn't ready to voice it. I was afraid of opening up, of unraveling the threads I'd woven so tightly around myself. But maybe, just maybe, I was more afraid of not trying, of never knowing what could be. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over his name. My breath caught in my throat as I tapped out a message, my heart pounding with each letter. Can we talk? I typed. The message sent, and I felt as if I had stepped off a cliff, free falling into the unknown. I stared at my phone, my breath suspended in the cold air of my dimly lit kitchen. My fingers trembled slightly as I waited for a response, the blue bubble on the screen a stark contrast against the dark mode I had enabled. It seemed like hours before my phone finally buzzed, the sound echoing in the quiet room. With a racing heart, I picked it up. Yes, I think we should, the text from him read. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by anxiety about what this conversation would entail. Meet me at the old oak tree in the park? I suggested. It was a place full of memories, both sweet and bitter, a fitting backdrop for what could be a turning point in our relationship. See you in 20 minutes, he replied. I slipped my phone into the pocket of my jacket, feeling the weight of the impending discussion. As I laced up my boots, I couldn't help but think about all the times we'd met under that tree, how it felt like a symbol of the growth and decay of our relationship. I brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, grabbed my keys, and stepped out into the chilly evening. I arrived at the park, the last of the sunlight casting long shadows on the path leading to our tree. The oak stood majestic and solid, its branches sprawling above like the arms of an old friend. I leaned against its rough bark and waited, the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves filling the air around me. He approached slowly, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his coat. I couldn't read his expression in the fading light, but I felt a flutter of nervousness as he stopped in front of me. I'm glad you agreed to meet, I began, my voice a little unsteady. I've been thinking a lot, he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. About us. I have too, I admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I feel like there's so much left unsaid between us. He finally looked at me, his gaze intense. I know I've made mistakes, he confessed. And I understand if you can't forgive me. I sighed, my own heart heavy with regret and longing. It's not just about forgiveness, I said softly. It's about whether we can move forward, whether there's still a wee dot. He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing against mine. The touch sent a shiver through me, a reminder of the connection that had once been effortless between us. We talked for hours under the old oak tree, our voices low as we navigated the delicate terrain of our past and pondered the possibilities of our future. I shared my fears and dreams, my disappointments, and my hopes. He listened attentively, his responses thoughtful, giving me a glimpse of the man I had fallen in love with. As the night deepened, the air grew colder, but neither of us made a move to leave. It felt as though stepping away from the tree would mean stepping away from the chance to mend what had been broken. I've missed this, he murmured, his hand finding mine in the darkness. I've missed you. I've missed you too, I confessed, allowing myself to lean into him slightly. But I'm scared. What if we can't make it work? He squeezed my hand, a silent promise in his grip. Then we take it one day at a time, he said. We rebuild, slowly. Maybe it won't be the same as before, but maybe it can be something better. I nodded, the idea taking root in my heart. Maybe it was naive to think we could start anew, but as I looked up at him, the moonlight illuminating his features, I felt a flicker of hope. "Let's try," I whispered, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "Let's try," he agreed, and just like that, it felt like we were both free falling into a new beginning, together. I watched as he reached for my hand, his fingers trembling slightly as they interlocked with mine. I could feel the warmth of his palm, a contrast against the cool evening air that swept through the open window. The cafe was nearly empty, save for the soft clinking of dishes and the low murmur of a radio playing an old jazz tune in the background. My heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration, wondering if this attempt to reconnect could truly mend the fractures of our past. "Do you remember," I started, my voice barely above a whisper, "the first time we came here?" I looked around, taking in the vintage posters on the walls and the flickering candle on our table, casting shadows that danced gently around us. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I ordered a coffee too strong, and you made that face, you know, the one you make when you're trying not to laugh at me." I laughed, the sound echoing slightly in the quiet space. "I do remember. And you pretended to like it, just to prove a point." As we reminisced, the initial awkwardness that hung between us began to dissipate, replaced by a familiar comfort. I felt a flicker of hope, wondering if perhaps the love we thought was lost could be rediscovered in these shared memories and quiet confessions. I found myself studying his face in the dim light, noticing the subtle changes time had etched into his features. The lines around his eyes weren't there before, and his hair had hints of silver that caught the light every so often. Despite these signs of time, he still had the same earnest expression, the one that had drawn me to him all those years ago. "Why did you say yes to meeting tonight?" I asked, my heart thudding in my chest with the weight of the question. He took a deep breath, his eyes not leaving mine. "Because I've missed you," he admitted, "and not just in the quiet moments at night. I missed this, the real conversation, the sharing of little, inconsequential memories that somehow mean everything." I felt my breath catch in my throat. "I missed you too," I confessed, letting the vulnerability show in my eyes. "I've tried to move on, but part of me is always wondering about you, about us." We sat in a silence that was heavy with all the things we were both too scared to say. It was a comfortable silence, though, the kind that only exists between two people who have deeply intertwined souls. As the night drew on, we continued to talk, our conversation meandering through the past and cautiously around the edges of the future. I noticed how he would occasionally reach across the table, his hand brushing against mine, as if ensuring I was still there. "Do you think we can really start over?" I asked, the fear of his answer gnawing at me. "After everything?" He paused, considering his words carefully. "I don't know if we can start over completely," he said slowly, "but maybe we don't have to. Maybe we just need to start from where we are right now, accepting all that has happened and building something new." I nodded, feeling a weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't about erasing our past, but learning from it, growing from it. I felt my heart begin to thaw, hope blossoming in its place as I realized that this was not just an end but also a beginning. I felt his touch linger like the last rays of sunlight, hesitant yet hopeful. As he withdrew his hand, I caught myself reaching out, not wanting the moment to end. The silence between us grew heavy, filled with unspoken words and unasked questions. I gathered my courage, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "Do you ever think about us, about what we could have been?" He paused, his eyes searching mine, and I saw the flicker of something deep and unresolved. "Every day," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The confession hung in the air, a fragile truth that threatened to shatter the calm of the evening. I felt my heart race, my hopes fluttering wildly like a caged bird. "And now?" I asked, my voice shaking with the magnitude of what I was suggesting. He reached for my hand again, his grip firm and reassuring. "Now, I think we have a chance to find out," he said, and in his eyes, I saw the reflection of my own longing. I found myself walking beside him, our steps in sync as we moved through the quiet streets. The night was alive with the gentle hum of the city, and the cool air brushed against my skin, making me shiver slightly. He noticed and pulled me closer, his warmth seeping into my bones. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight," he said, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded, my head resting against his shoulder, feeling an overwhelming sense of rightness. As we walked, I allowed myself to dream, to imagine a future where I didn't have to hide my heart or guard my feelings. I pictured lazy Sunday mornings and laughter-filled evenings, a life shared with depth and honesty. I knew there were no guarantees, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. We stopped at my doorstep, neither of us eager to say goodbye. I fumbled with my keys, prolonging the moment. He watched me, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Thank you for tonight," I said, my heart full. "For everything." He stepped closer, tilting my chin up so I was looking into his eyes. "No, thank you. For letting me in again, for giving us another chance." His voice was soft, each word imbued with emotion. I reached up, my hand brushing against his cheek, feeling the stubble that had formed since our dinner began. "Let's take it slow," I suggested, my desire for him battling with my need to protect my heart. He nodded, his lips pressing against my forehead in a kiss that promised patience and understanding. "As slow as you need," he replied, his eyes holding mine in a silent vow. As he turned to leave, I felt a sense of completeness, a puzzle piece clicking into place. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but as I watched him walk away, a part of me walked with him, tethered by hope and a love that, I now realized, had never truly faded.